You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Did I ever tell you about an interesting little experiment I ran on the Best Buy water cooler?
No, but I do. You have told me about the Best Buy water cooler for sure.
Yeah, we've talked about it on multiple episodes in the past. We even had kind of a water cooler reunion with some folks at Best Buy I used to work with. But for those that are new to the show, water cooler was essentially an intranet message board that Best Buy provided. Intranet is kind of a, like internet that companies can use so they can all be on the same network all around the country or the world, but it's not necessarily connected to, the internet as we know it today or something like that. So, but the beauty of water cooler was that, yes, you could talk about work, and there was a lot of interesting stuff about work that I read on there that helped make me a better employee, but they also recognized the importance of just letting people talk, letting people get to know each other. And one thing they ended up putting up was a section where you could talk politics. And it was interesting because this was right around 2007, 2008 when the economic crisis first started hitting and the Republicans first started really going towards the batshit crazy scenario. So it was interesting watching some of the conservative leaning folks on that political site react to things. And one time I thought it would be interesting to give something a try. So I went to the Washington Post website. I found the very first article that Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward wrote on the Watergate situation, and this was just after Obama was elected. And what I did is I went through and essentially edited that article and took out the names of the original people involved from the Nixon administration and replaced them with the appropriate comparable positions that were in the Obama administration, and reposted the article as if it was new, and people fell for it.
Really?
Yeah, it took about half my shift for me to notice that someone did finally come up and say, hey, wait a minute, I saw what you did there. But it was interesting to see that people just blindly accepted it as absolute fact and didn't take the time to double check. Kind of reminded me of the story Steve Allen, a famous comedian, one of the first hosts of The Tonight Show, told about his family's reactions to the Orson Welles War of the Worlds broadcast, how they were freaked out and were running out of their house just to pass a radio that was playing a different station, and it was playing something completely different. And Steve Allen thought, if this really was the end of the world, it wouldn't be a one-station exclusive. But it was the experiment I ran again was quite interesting because it scared me in a lot of ways, and it should have scared me a lot more, considering what we face now politically, because it was a situation where people just accepted it. It had to be fact because confirmation bias, I guess, would be the appropriate bias there. They assumed that Obama was bad, and so he was. And that reminds me of what we're seeing in the news today. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, folks. We thank you for letting us start the week with you. I am Tim the Nerd here, the podcast making, public transit taking, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing son of a gun. And sitting next to me we have the vivacious, the beautiful, the lovely, greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tim. Absolutely fabulous.
Yes, one reason I'm fabulous this week is that, to tie into the original story, we started the show with Mango Mussolini's been indicted again, this time on his most serious charge of being a part of a conspiracy to start the January 6th riots in order to prevent the election from happening. And honestly, like, just seeing the news, seeing how people are reacting to it, and also, most importantly, seeing poll numbers to where you have a decent amount of people, regardless of their political leanings, saying this is pretty serious. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that this is the start of what we need as a nation to get over this. I could be wrong, But,
yeah, I mean, to me, I think it hasn't gotten bad enough yet.
Well, he's already making it worse because, like, the judge told him the other day, it was like Thursday, the judge told him, don't make any, unnecessary comments on your social media, blah, blah, blah. I'm extremely paraphrasing, folks, but, basically she said, don't do what you normally do. And he said, sure. But then this weekend, he already came out with posts stating, if you come for me, I'll come after you. And then verbally, ripping into people that could be potential witnesses. Mm-hmm. Mike Pence, already has come out and said, he's not going to volunteer his testimony, but he's not going to fight it if they send him a subpoena or something like that.
Right.
So that's kind of threatening a witness. And the Justice Department has already put in a protective order. Trump's judges tried to delay that, and the judge in question was like, no, I'm going to see you Monday. So as we record this tomorrow, we're going to have something pretty interesting happening here because hopefully someone in a position of power will finally have their feet held to the fire. I can already hear some right-wing people, talking about, well, what about Hillary? Hillary did this, Hillary did that, and Hillary is no fucking saint at all. Don't get me wrong here. I am not a big fan of her whatsoever, and I will even go so far as to say that Justice Department at times did come at her with kid gloves. But they also came with Joe Biden with kid gloves. They came at Mike Pence with kid gloves when we're talking about the classified document situation. Mm-hmm. I don't want a person in a position of power to be treated with kid gloves. In theory, and this is not a reality that will ever happen because humans being humans, we suck. But in theory, justice should be applied equally from the President of the United States to me. But it's not. It's not, and I just hope though that this can be a start of something to start doing what we should be, and that's holding people in position of power their feet to the fire when they do wrong. Now some people may say, well, what about the future? You'll have other presidents just try to investigate their opponents in the future, and the justice system in this country is far from perfect, but I still think it's pretty darn fair. The fact that you can, even if you had a trial to where you were found guilty, if you have the money, unfortunately, and a lot of these people in the government will have some extra cash compared to me, they will have the ability to appeal and go from there. So I don't know. Part of me is really encouraged at seeing this, and I hope that this is the start of something to have politicians be held more accountable. Now, it could go south in a heartbeat. We could have one bad economic report. We could have Biden have a health struggle live on television like Mitch McConnell did the other day, mm-hmm. and we'll be ending up with a Republican back in office again. That's how much of a tightrope the situation is. That, it's like with Biden, if there is another alternative that comes along, I hope so. But, Biden, if he's the one on the ballot in November 2024, I'm voting for him. But, I'm feeling right now like I did with Ginsburg when she was alive. The last couple of years of her life, during the Trump administration, it's just like, hold on. Mm-hmm, hold on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. For real on all of that, on that stuff, I have not been tracking either of those stories beyond just knowing that they're both happening. Mm-hmm. What about Justice Thomas? And we're talking about Supreme Court justices.
No other news as of yet. I mean, because the problem with the Thomas situation when it comes to him receiving gifts, there are no official rules in place in terms of, them having to report some of this stuff. So it is egregiously morally wrong what he did, but he's not really breaking a rule. And you got to acknowledge the truth. It sucks what he's doing, and we should, as a country, be forcing our politicians to come up with some standard of etiquette for the people in a position of power. Because it was one of the justices, I think Scalia, came out recently and said it would be morally wrong for Congress to impose. Congress cannot impose any rules on a Supreme Court. Fuck that. It's checks and balances. They're supposed to be able to keep each other in check.
I mean, the Supreme Court, the judiciary is absolutely the least democratic institution in the country. The president you elect, your representatives in Congress you elect. You don't even elect. You don't even get a choice. You get the presidential choice, who then gets to appoint the Supreme Court justices. So, and then they serve for life. And so they have no motivation to have to stay in power. They're gonna stay in power. So they don't have to do as much backroom or whatever that people do to try and get elected.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think it's a big ask, though, to make sure Supreme Court's not taking Venmo payments from defendants that he's seeing while on the bench without recusing himself at all. That's like, if a county judge did that judge, any sort of verdict that came in any trials that judge had up until the point he gets caught would probably be voided, and that judge would be going to jail. Yet Clarence Thomas gets to keep on getting him free vacations.
Yeah, man.
Power fucking sucks.
And the problem is that he's basically giving himself a pardon, and so that's going to signal to Trump that it's totally fine to give yourself a pardon. That's why he's trying to be elected, so he can pardon himself. Yeah,
and to tie in the story to the Trump thing, I mean, all I would ask any conservative-leaning person is, if you take the Trump story and just took Trump's name out and put in insert Democrat's name here and read the list of everything that politician has done, you would be screaming for their head, and you would be right to do so. This is not a time for party over country. This is a time to make sure we can stop a fucking madman from getting control of power again. He had a taste, and thankfully was thwarted before he did anything extremely serious. He did enough, but it could have been much worse. I mean, because we're finding out now that we were really close to him, thrown because of the situation here in Portland that he was stoking the fires for. Mm-hmm. He was going to call an insurrection act. Mm-hmm. And yeah, no, that's just wrong. That is not America. And if anybody actively supports that and think that's a good thing, you're a fool. And if you think it's something that won't affect you, maybe it won't affect you today, maybe it won't affect you tomorrow, but somewhere down the line it will. Because with madmen like these, if you don't follow them lockstep and support them in every single thing they do, they will destroy you.
Yeah. It's a sad situation.
Indeed. There's one for the drinking game, folks. But we'll definitely keep our ears to the millstone, or whatever the whole saying is. I guess I had an idea, folks. But we'll keep you updated as time goes on, because in an interesting way. I mean, this show has kind of been like a digest of life during Trump.
Mm-hmm.
During the administration with the coup and everything like that. And it's definitely a topic we'll be talking about again. I mean, my hope is that this is the start of the country being more serious in holding elected officials responsible for their actions. Too many from both sides of the aisle have been able to get away with a lot. I mean, Henry Kissinger should be in shackles, not celebrating his 90th or so birthday. So I hope it's not going to be perfect. Life's not ever going to be perfect. And there will be peaks and valleys in history, as there always are, but I'm hopeful for the first time in a while.
Oh, yeah? Well, I guess I've always been hopeful. I couldn't believe that Trump won. And thank God he didn't win again. But he could, if he doesn't win in 2024, he's coming back in 2028. Until he dies, he will be coming back. Or goes to jail for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, with the stress of... Because, the Republicans' chances in 2024 are sinking fast, if you think about it, in a lot of ways. Mostly because of the fact that Trump, when you make a donation to the Trump campaign, they have it set up to where like 90% of that donation is going to go to his legal defense fund, and then the rest goes to the campaign. And you have like the Republican Party of Michigan had like $53 in the bank. The Republican Party of, I believe, Minnesota was about to go bankrupt. They're coming, I think financially they're going to be taking a big hit if they keep on supporting the albatross here. So give us your thoughts while I make sure there's a cat that's not killing herself.
Sure. I think that Trump brought out the worst in people, and it led to so much division in the country. I'm just really hopeful. Everybody said he wasn't going to win the first time he won. But, should it be illegal what they're doing, the 90%, 10% deal? Should that not be allowed? I think absolutely that shouldn't be allowed. It should be, every penny, I think, should have to go to the campaign rather than individuals' needs or desires.
It's just, the more Jack Smith is throwing out indictments like the beads at a Mardi Gras or something like that, that's going to be more money he's going to have to spend in legal fees, because the legal fees aren't all for him. They're for like that assistant of his down in Mar-a-Lago, and for paying other people's legal expenses too. But that is another form of threat if you think about it, because like what if one of those people decides, hey, I don't want to hang for this guy, I'm going to turn state's witness. All of a sudden their legal expenses get cut at the knees. That's speculation, of course, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's a form of keeping people in your power.
Yeah, it's manipulation.
Yeah, something he's good at. And again, as a pro wrestling fan, I think we, as a nation, should make sure that if there is another WWE Hall of Famer on the ballot for president, we vote no.
Really, I didn't think that Trump had done that well as a wrestler.
He had an important place in WWE history. Trump Plaza hosted WrestleManias 4 and 5. He and Marla Maples, his second wife, made an appearance at WrestleMania 7. And then, of course, WrestleMania 23 at Ford Field was the billionaire versus billionaire match. It was Umaga with Vince McMahon as his manager, and it was Bobby Lashley with Donald Trump as his manager. And whoever won, the loser billionaire, either Vince or Donald Trump, would have to have their head shaved. And Vince ended up with his head shaved, but we did get the gif of Stone Cold Steve Austin giving Donald Trump the stunner in the middle of the ring.
Whoa.
So there was that, I guess. So Trump does have a legitimate history in wrestling history. I mean, he definitely helped the cause, despicable though that human being is.
But he helped the cause of popularity?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of housing, WrestleManias 4 and 5 and whatnot. So,
yeah.
And the other things I mentioned.
Yes, okay.
But anyway.
So it sounds like you're a bit of a Trump fanboy.
He's so the best. Did I tell you, as a kid, I actually called the Trump Plaza Hotel as a kid, like, hello, I'd like to speak to Mr. Trump. And then the lady was like, okay, please hold. I'm like, fuck. Hung up the phone.
That's so funny that you would think to do that.
People don't understand how much Donald Trump has been in the public eye since the 80s. I mean, just even when he was going bankrupt, he found a way to keep himself out there. And we have the 2008 writer's strike, unfortunately, to kind of thank for him getting into the public eye big enough for people to consider him for president. So, yay, support your strikes.
Yeah, unforeseen consequences.
Yeah.
Unintended consequences.
Unintended, yeah. Anyway, how's your week been?
You know, my week has been fabulous, Tim. As usual, I've just been doing my work and doing my fun and keeping them in a good ratio for summertime. The summertime ratio, because I'm a professor, means more fun, less work. Mm-hmm. But it's still working in the summer.
She has a spreadsheet and everything, you know, like, I'm at 39% of work today. No, it needs to be at 35.
Yeah, exactly. You got to keep things balanced.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say I did like a hike, a swim, a bicycle ride, but I did not do any of those things this week. But great news. Perhaps the audience never heard that my bicycle got stolen.
Yes, Portland is... We're like Gotham City just before Batman hit. You know? Mm-hmm. Crime everywhere.
As far as bikes go.
We need a Portland Batman. Hey, man.
So, anyway, my bike was this really nice... It was called Linus, the company that made it, and it was like a Dutch around town bike, very upright, very cute. And that was a bike that my wife had purchased for me. In the way that she purchased things for me, which was I purchased them and she gave them to me. So anyway, this bike got stolen in the fall, really. And I haven't had a bike since then. And I tried to get like a friend's bike, but I ended up with this really kind of piece of total crap bike.
What kind of a friend do you think I am?
So that didn't work out. And then it's just been recently that I've been able to save enough money to replace my bicycle.
Yay.
And so I did that this week. And so I went to many bicycle shops. We have lots of bicycle shops in Portland, like lots of independent, tiny bicycle shops. I don't know, maybe other places have them too, like other cool places where people ride bicycles, but like there were no bicycle shops in my town.
That's socialist. I don't know.
Anyway, so I ended up getting this bike from this German company called Ghost Bikes. And it's very pretty, black and red color scheme. And it's a mountain bike with front shocks, so that when you go into the potholes, you don't feel them.
Now, did you put a playing card in the back so it makes a noise when you wreck?
No.
Okay.
I can do that if you want me to. Anyway, I'm really happy about that.
Hooray.
Yeah, just me. I'm just trying to get ready for Burning Man. It's 2.5 weeks till Burning Man, and that makes me nervous because I'm not anywhere close to packed.
And when you're at Burning Man, you will be able to maybe get to hand out some of our fancy new business cards.
That's right.
Yes, that was a big accomplishment here for the show this week. After years of talking about getting a business card set up, we actually went ahead and did it. And we used Canva, of all things. Canva, like if you have any sort of a creative endeavor, like a podcast or even like a book cover, you can design a book cover on Canva. Canva is a great resource for people that don't have much money. You get high quality stuff, at really good cost. Like we got 100 business cards for $20.
Yeah.
I mean, can't go wrong. I mean, like, we don't have a big show, so I don't anticipate, like, going through these in, like, a week, you know? But it's nice to know that that option is there, and it's nice to know that, you know, like the cards that we have now, we can always update them. We can always get a new design if we think, you know, something's not working. Because that's the thing with creative stuff. Like, what works today may not work a year from now. Just because life happens, you change, and whatnot. So I am very, very excited. It has the show logo, the ChatGPT generated a promo, you know, with a podcast where knowledge and friends collide. And on the back of the business card, we have a QR code that you would be able to scan to go to our link tree to find out where you can listen to the show and where you can find us on social media.
Right. We think it's a brilliant design. It's very simple and gives all the information they need. Mm-hmm. And we're looking forward to handing them out to people.
We're going to be like Jehovah's Witnesses, but cooler, I guess. We're not going to be talking about
We're going to have Tim as our deity.
Yeah. I don't think the world... If any... as the deity of the game Civilization, you know, because you control everything there, I'm usually the one that is building my civilization up to kill everybody else. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm super nice until I get nuclear weapons, and then everybody dies. You know, so I would not be a good deity.
Well, you know, sometimes deities are assholes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that... Some people
they all have caused untold deaths.
Yeah.
Gods.
Speaking of assholes, somebody is claiming that Lizzo is an asshole.
I have heard this. I have heard it, and it breaks my heart.
Well, I get how you're feeling, because, you know, it brings me back to when I first heard the news in 2002 of Pete Townsend. Do you remember what he did?
No.
He was busted by the London police in a child sex sting. But turned out, and this was proven after the fact, it turned out that, you know, he was writing preparing a book that he was writing on child sex abuse and whatnot, and he, you know, wanted to show, you know, via evidence that, you know, some of these dark web websites are still utilizing, like, Visa and MasterCard for you to pay. And one time only, and again, this is stuff that has been proven after the fact. So I'm not, you know, trying to cover up for the actions of somebody who did something bad. One time and one time only, he submitted a credit card, which was declined, but it was a child sex site that was accepting credit card payments, and he got busted. And I didn't know the full details when it first came out. You just saw Pete Townsend and child sex sting, and, like, that gutted me. Mm-hmm. You know, but I think most importantly, I think people, you know, when you do, because I know you've talked about your love for Lizzo in the past on the show on multiple occasions. Yes. I think in a situation like this, a person has to, it's kind of a tightrope walk, because on the one hand, the whole idea of believing victims is giving people the knowledge that they have the power to report something bad if they do see it.
Yeah.
You know, and that is a good thing in this particular case, you know, because these women in question have been able to file a lawsuit. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're right. That doesn't necessarily mean they're telling the truth. Anybody with money can file a lawsuit. And we don't know what the future's going to hold, what the future's going to play out with. Mm-hmm. You know, so you know, I would just, like with anything, you know, just put yourself in her situation, in Lizzo's situation, and be like, what would you want the public to do if you were in her shoes?
You were being investigated, or
yeah, I mean, it's like this. Something like this has to be played out in terms of letting, you know, the court case or whatever do its thing, because it's certainly possible that maybe it gets to a point to where there's a cash settlement and a non-disclosure agreement, and we never hear from it again without going to trial.
That's likely what's going to happen.
Yeah,
99% of civil lawsuits settle, and they should, because to take a civil lawsuit through all of its parts to get through trial is really expensive, and sometimes your lawsuit is not worth the same, as much as you're going to pay. You're spending the money you would win.
Yeah.
Bringing your lawsuit.
I mean, that's why Dominion settled with Fox News for the $700+ million for their libel case, because maybe they could have won a bigger judgment, but Fox would have been able to appeal and prolong that. And, why not take the decent sized money now? But I guess, just folks do need to keep in mind that, stuff like this needs to play out. But, on a broader scope, there are a couple things here. Like, one, more and more we do hear stories about these musicians, these artists that we love and support, turning out to be not really good people. Like David Bowie. Made a lot of great music, but more and more stories about what he was like, especially in the 70s and 80s, have come out, and not a good guy in a lot of ways.
Like what?
Having sex with a 14-year-old. Just sexual. There's instances where I think he's been accused of rape and all that. Just the guy who was like a sexual fiend. Like in the 80s, Axl Rose actually fought David Bowie because David tried to pick up his girlfriend.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so he's like super skeevy.
Yeah.
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 That sucks. But I think, this is a case like many where I think you have to separate the art from the artist. Van Gogh cut his ear off. He was clearly crazy. But we don't look at his art and say that was done by a crazy person. We say that was done by a brilliant artist.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the times when you do hear people, especially on social media, and that's where a lot of people are guilty of doing it, when they do loudly proclaim, I don't like the actions of what this artist is doing, I mean, a lot of times it is virtue signaling. That doesn't mean they're lying, but it's more of, I want to tell the world that I am against this bad thing so they will look at me as good. And how that doesn't solve anything. That just unnecessarily ruffles people's feathers, in ways that kind of close off conversation, and that close off, in a situation like this with Lizzo, close off the idea of thinking about, the long term, giving this a chance to play out. That it's like people will already come to their this own personal decision as to what's happened, and that kind of ties into my other point about this, like, we got to take a look at how people react here too, because she is a black woman. She's not a white guy.
She's also a fat black woman.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of parallel to superhero movies, there are two actors, Jonathan Majors and the guy who plays the Flash. I forgot his name, but there's a guy who plays the Flash in the new movie who has had a lot of legal issues. Ezra Miller. He's had a lot of legal issues, but Warner Brothers stuck behind him and went ahead and had him support the go ahead and support the new Flash movie that came out, which ended up bombing, sadly, which is, I say sadly, because that got Michael Keaton back in the Batman suit. What a waste of a great opportunity there. But, I take what they did with Ezra to where they gave him multiple chance after multiple chance after multiple chance when he was doing some really horrific things, and I compare that to Jonathan Majors. You remember watching Loki, the TV show with me? He was the bad guy that I was excited for at the end, Kang.
Oh, okay.
That was played by Jonathan Majors, and word came out recently that he was being investigated by the LAPD for a domestic violence issue. And after that, as it happens, you had a lot of former co-workers of his come out and say he's not a good person, and then you ended up having like his management drop him, and there's even question on whether he's going to stick around with the Marvel case. Now, putting those two together, two different companies, of course, two different sets of leadership teams, but it does beg to differ. Why is the white guy who screwed up multiple times in horrific ways, still getting a chance, whereas the black guy's getting cut off at the knees because Jonathan Majors ended up losing a couple high-profile movie roles too over something that's still in the court system, and word came out recently that he may not be as guilty as people are trying to make him out to be. That doesn't make him a nice guy at all. That doesn't make him not guilty, but it could mean that there's more to the story than what we were initially told. And tying that back into Lizzo, it's just like, what kind of reaction is she going to get? Like, apparently, like, radio stations have already stopped playing her music.
Right. We all rush to avoid... It's like we want to avoid supporting someone who turns out to be guilty. So we just assume everybody's guilty.
And again, with the history of bad people in the music industry, I can understand why people's first instinct is to go towards, they must be guilty. At the end of the day, my thought on this is that, it's in the court's hands now. It will be investigated. If it's nonsense, it's going to be dismissed. But if it does turn out that either she or because as she's essentially the head of her corporation that runs everything there, so even though she may not be the one necessarily doing the stuff, if she has created an environment that would allow this negative stuff to happen, she is still very much responsible.
Yeah. As the CEO. Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll let it play out. I'm not much of a Lizzo fan myself, so like I got no skin in the game either way. So, but I'm gonna follow the golden rule. Like, if I were in her shoes, I would want people to just. It's human nature. You're gonna have your opinion on whether she's guilty or not, but that doesn't mean you don't accept, whatever comes out in the future.
Right.
Whether that be a settlement to where nobody talks and everybody's happy, walks away with lots of money, or if it goes to court or something like that, give it the chance that it needs.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Lizzo?
No, again, I just hope that it's not true.
There you go. Because she does, to her credit, she definitely has encouraged positivity in terms of changing the general public's perception of what beauty is.
Yeah. That's true. She's done a lot for fat people. She's done a lot for black women. Just in terms of being so charming and wonderful, and, just demonstrating a different, maybe, side of folks than we're used to seeing.
Exactly.
She seemed to bring something out in people.
There we go. Well, speaking of bringing out, we love music on this show. And on occasion, we will have episodes like what we're going to do now for our main event here, where we create a playlist based around a theme. And I thought, let's go back in time 40 years, and the professor and I will be talking our 5 favorite songs from 1983.
Oh, 1983.
Yes.
I was 9. You were 7. Being 9, I'm very familiar with the music of 1983. I feel like all I did was listen to music and go swimming and run around. At 9, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You don't have the same ego that you have at 12. Like, something happens and you become more self-conscious.
Yeah, for me, I didn't really become like the type of music fan that I am today until a few years after this. At the time, if there was, apart from the Rolling Stones, if there was a song that I heard that I liked it, but I wasn't like, hey, I need to get that record. because that was at that point was still kind of a foreign concept. To me, it was either MTV or the radio,
Right.
and that's all I needed. But there have definitely been, and we'll go through the list here, but there have been a number of bands that I've discovered through the years that released some great music in 1983. So I thought we'd go through here and give our choices. How about I start us off?
Okay.
All right. This guy was a fan of the Sex Pistols. And in the late 70s, he was part of a band called Generation X, and was actually part of a TV talk show that the Sex Pistols were on that was kind of infamous. But at the start of the new decade in the 80s, came out with an album, debut album called Rebel Yell, and we're going to talk about the title track here, Rebel Yell. I mean, Billy Idol.
Great video.
Great video. Great artist too. He wasn't one for as high of esteem that people have for him, he didn't really have that long of a popular time in the spotlight. I mean, like the last time I really saw him, with a song that was really hitting it big was like in the early 90s with the song Cradle of Love, that was from the Ford Fairlane soundtrack, and which sadly enough, the video was more popular than the movie. But Rebel Yell, I mean, it's like what Billy did, he essentially was able to take what worked for punk music and added a pop element to it, in my opinion, and there is nothing wrong with that. He ended up making a lot of money, and he ended up making a Christmas album at one point too, a few years back, which was funny as hell to see him dressed up in a Christmas sweater, smiling at a piano to Billy Idol Christmas.
That's so funny. There's lots of British artists who put out Christmas albums. Like, it's a thing in Britain for sort of washed up artists to make Christmas albums.
Well, not even washed up. I mean, David Bowie with Bing Crosby. David Bowie was in the prime of his career when he did, the Little Drummer Boy duet with Bing Crosby.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean everybody put out a great Christmas record. Most of the Christmas records suck.
I think all Christmas records suck, and I'm looking at you, George Michael. Last Christmas is horrible. But Rebel Yell, love the song. I mean, Billy, in a lot of ways, represents a good part of the 80s. The image that he had with the hair and the leather and all that is still very much a sign of its time. I don't think if Billy Idol debuted today with this particular album, he'd necessarily hit it as big, but he was a great artist.
What's his deal? What's his story? Do you know?
Well, like I said, the band Generation X, and then he had, his early success in the early 80s, but he did have a motorcycle accident around the time of Cradle of Love, and just by the time he got healed again, grunge hit, and he was, just considered old. I mean, which may, I mean, think of the movie The Wedding Singer, the Adam Sandler one.
Yeah.
That was, 96, 97. And that, even though Billy Idol had a cameo as himself in that movie, it was still presented in a way that didn't make him look like the greatest star in the world. It was just the normal, hey, there's an old washed up guy that's making a cameo in an Adam Sandler movie. Yay! Type of, which I'm not knocking Billy Idol's performance in that movie. It was a lot of people's favorite Adam Sandler movie. I mean, one of the sweetest romantic comedies ever.
Yeah, especially if you like that kind of music.
Exactly. I mean, The Wedding Singer had a great soundtrack from first to last.
Well, don't look at me that way, Nerdy Tim. I am just saying.
Okay. Well, how about we get your first choice?
All right, so this is interesting given what we've just been talking about, because it is a David Bowie track. But, if you think about it, the early 80s was a really great time for Bowie fans. He was very productive during that period, and a lot of the songs were great. China Girl, great song. Video, so inappropriate, but
that is the funny thing about videos from the 80s, because I remember with my youngest Luke a couple years back, I watched the video for Hot for Teacher, And then the moment where the teacher starts giving the kids a table dance, like Luke was like, "Whoa!" And then I was like, "Would you love school if this happened there?" He goes, "Yeah." They got away with a lot in the '80s. I mean, no wonder I'm a dirty old man. Anyway,
That's funny. That's funny, and that you're very proud of your son. That
wanting a table dance to stay in school. A B.
It's so wrong. It's so wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad the people at home couldn't see that. But anyway, go ahead and talk about David.
So it's a David Bowie song called "Let's Dance," and put on your red shoes and dance the blues. It's just a great song. I think it epitomizes David Bowie in the '80s, and I thought, well, since David Bowie was such a influential artist, he's got to appear on our list.
Exactly. This song helped introduce the world to one Stevie Ray Vaughan, one of the greatest guitar players ever. I mean, I think that goes without saying. And this album is funny too, because like for years before this album was his first with a new record company and new management. The previous record company and previous management he had were trying to force him to become more pop, and because of how little money he was getting, like gave him the bird and did all the all the abstract things that he did in the 70s to great fame, but not the biggest record sales in the world. So what does he do with the first album with new management at the new record company? Makes the most pop album he's ever made and makes millions. And it's in a way it's similar to Prince with the contract he had with Warner Brothers, because like the Warner Brothers signed him initially to this obscenely long contract, and the reason he ended up changing his name to the symbol and putting out as many albums as he could was just to burn through that contract as quickly as possible. And by the time he finally got out with it, came out with the album Musicology in the early 2000s, it was like he never left.
Yeah, man, such brilliance. Prince really was, brilliant. Artist. I miss his influence in the world.
Yeah, same with David Bowie. I mean, David Bowie is a student of music and a student of like performance art in a lot of ways, because artists like him were more than just the music, were more than just the stage show. It was about creating personas and whatnot. So even though he's done some bad things, like we said, folks, you can learn positives from people, that do as much as he did. Yeah. All right, let me go on to my next one. This is an underrated track from a band that I love, the Rolling Stones. The 80s were not really kind to them. They kind of bookended it in really good ways with Tattoo You and with Steel Wheels, but the albums in the middle, varying quality. This one, Undercover, not one of their best albums, but they do have a couple of cool tracks on here, and one I really appreciated was the track She Was Hot. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like emotional rescue, that weird way that Mick Jagger can be perverted and yet still sound cool. What do I mean by that? Like, if I were singing some of the things that Mick Jagger sings in these songs, you would just think, what a goof, where's the pepper spray? But Mick Jagger sings it and it's just like cool, and you're like, I want to be just like him. You get what I mean? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like, he's incredibly sexy because he's incredibly confident. Yeah.
Yeah, and just it's a different type of sound for them. I mean, because this was around the time where Mick was taking more control of the band. But just overall, I love that. And she was hot, and she kissed my mouth. She was hot, Just it's, again, not their best, not one of their best ever, but I dig it. I dig it.
I think that you just did this because you couldn't do a 5 songs and not include the Rolling Stones.
I mean, they released the album during that year, and it's a favorite song. Okay. Trying to give me. Okay. Go to your next one.
Okay, my next one.
Never heard of before.
My next one is "Beat It" by Mr. Michael Jackson.
All right. Okay.
Again, an artist, like all of these artists really have been plagued with turning out not to be who they seem to be. But, the business formed them into what they were, and that's what they had to be.
And I think history has shown that more often than not, people that do get to that level of power, even in a creative industry, tend to have a lot of bodies buried in their backyards, figuratively. They've had people that, friends that they've, destroyed. They will do whatever they can. Power will corrupt.
Do you think, how does that relate to Michael Jackson, do you think?
I think back to that interview that he did with Martin Bashir in the 2000s, the last controversial one, to where, he's like holding a kid's hand, he's creepy, folks. But there was a part of the documentary where he was in a store in Vegas, an upscale store, and Michael just walked in and goes, I want that, 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 I want that. And if you have the power to do that, you're going to think nothing's going to stop you.
Right.
Because, think of the money he made. He was able to get the types of lawyers that would make it virtually impossible for an average person to fight. Because they could delay. They have all the tricks in the book because they have all the money and the resources to be able to use all the tricks in the book. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this single was groundbreaking, as was the video. The dancing in this video, some of the best dancing I've ever seen.
And you know who did the guitar solo?
No.
Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, he initially Michael Jackson had contacted Pete Townsend of all people, but Pete rightfully told him, "I'm more of a rhythm player. I don't think I can do what you want me to. But here's Eddie Van Halen's number." But Eddie Van Halen never got paid for this.
Oh.
And there were lawsuits up until the point that Michael Jackson died from Eddie Van Halen trying to get some royalties for this song.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it's worth millions, I'm sure. Any kind of royalty on that song.
Yeah. The beauty of this album is the fact that Michael was able to kind of weave his way through different types of music. Because this was more of honestly, a straight-up rock song.
Yeah.
It had some dance elements, of course, but it was a rock song. And I'm sorry, I always will respect the work of an artist that is willing to step outside of their comfort zone. What does that mean? Like, I would personally, pay for like a special appearance with Michael if he were alive. I would no. But I can still acknowledge the work that he's done, and Beat It. I was a fan of that song as a kid, and I still listen to it on occasion and playlist now. It's a great song.
Yeah, it's a really great song.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Mr. Michael Jackson?
No, I think it's best we leave it there.
Yeah, before we take ourselves any further on this. All right, how about we talk about some middle-aged white guys?
Okay.
Yeah, are you familiar with Genesis?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting band. It blew my mind when I was working at a record store in my 20s. It blew my mind to find out that Peter Gabriel was the original lead singer of Genesis.
Really?
Yeah. And I guess even in the 70s, like, Genesis was more like prog rock, like the group Yes or something like that.
Yes.
So it wasn't the poppy hits, that you kind of associate with them now. But, Peter Gabriel decided to go solo, and they were looking for a singer, and the band said, "Hey, this guy that we have as our drummer, who had a brief appearance in A Hard Day's Night in the audience, and was was one of the people who played the Artful Dodger in the stage version of Oliver, a role he took over from Davy Jones, Mr. Phil Collins."
Yeah.
And the song I'm picking here is from the album called Genesis, a self-titled album from '83. That had a couple of their big hits as well, but this one I just really love, called Just a Job to Do. I remember a few years back I ended up becoming familiar with this because of an old YouTube video that I watched that had like multiple theme songs from long forgotten 80s shows, and this was one of those songs. It was used for like this mediocre cop show that I think was on ABC, but the song was really damn good, short, catchy, poppy as well, but felt right in like a crime type of business. And it goes without saying, Phil Collins, probably one of the best singers from the 80s. One of the best, not the best.
Yeah, I think the lead singer for Men at Work was also highly underrated singer.
You can dance if you want to. That guy.
No, that's not. It's not that band, man.
Okay. Well, before I dig a hole any further, how about we go on with our next one?
Buffalo Soldier. So this came out in '83, but was Bob Marley was already dead in 1983. So it was his last album, which was released after his death, and this song was on it. I've always loved this song, Buffalo Soldier. Are you familiar with the song?
Oh yeah, that's one of his, probably considered one of his greatest hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest reggae fan, period. Much less a Bob Marley fan, but does that mean I don't have respect for him? Of course not. I mean, he's one of the most influential musicians of the 70s.
Yeah, man. His music is really great. And, his whole family is still making music.
Yeah, I do remember for a brief time, Ziggy Marley did have a couple videos played on MTV.
Oh, for sure. Ziggy Marley is still playing. Like, you can go see Ziggy Marley.
Yeah, and I mean, we would have been able to still see Bob Marley today if he had just simply gone to the doctor. Because what he ended up dying from was something that it could have been nipped in the bud right away with just a very simple operation. But, religious beliefs being what they are.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Rastafari.
That's right. Smoke it up, baby. All right, shall I go on with my next one here?
Yeah.
All right, this is a song that has kind of influenced a character that I created for a book I've written and helped name a cat. This is a song from the band Motley Crue. It's called Looks That Kill, and when I hear this song, it reminds me of the character that I created for my book, Annie Walker. Like the video itself, the opposite. The video is very misogynistic, let's be honest, but I think that the lyrics themselves are not necessarily misogynistic. I think it is more presenting like, I think of the lyrics like I would like a grindhouse film from the 70s. She's a tough broad, she's got looks that kill, type of deal. It's not. I mean, they're not singing Hemingway or anything like that. But it's for a two-dimensional posturing type of song, which is what this is. I mean, very simple, very straightforward, but just hard rocking. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, man. Hard rocking. That's all it takes for you to love it.
Pretty much, honestly, because like music like this for me, what I love about this music is that the emotions that it can make you feel, and 9 times out of 10, the music that makes you feel those emotions is not the most complicated in the world. I mean, you can listen to a band like Steely Dan all day, and I will be the first to say that as musicians, yes, the guys in that band are great at what they do, but when you were just sitting there thinking that is a good way to play the bass, that's not enjoying the music. That's not bringing passion. I'd rather have a simple song like "Looks That Kill" because, like, again, on guitar, like, I'm realizing more and more the more I play guitar, just how little metal guitar players are really using their guitar. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as far as the rhythm goes, I'm not talking about like a soloing or anything like that, but you know, they aren't really moving their fingers much at all. What they're doing is, you know, finding like one chord that, you know, they can go up and down the neck of the guitar on and, you know, keep playing the same thing. But again, they're able to bring emotions out, and I love the emotions that I get from this song because I just picture a badass woman just walking into the room ready to kick some ass.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yep.
I'll have to check that song out because, you know, I don't really know it.
Yeah, you're not a big Motley Crue fan.
No.
You were not, you know, singing, "Oh, Vince Neil, please."
I mean, I know the song.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not a fan of it by any means.
I get it. But I know you're a fan of the next group.
I really am. It is the Talking Heads, Burning Down the House. This was a great album. Show album. I'm going to look at it. Speaking in Tongues. Great album, and the song probably introduced me to Talking Heads, a band that I have loved since, you know?
Mm-hmm. The video.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who helped with the choreography in that video?
Paula Abdul.
No. Tony Basil.
Right, who you've told me about Tony Basil and Johnny...
No, Tony Basil.
Davy Jones.
Davy Jones, yes.
Johnny Jones.
Somebody. Johnny, I love you.
Johnny Jones.
Yeah, no, Tony, for most of her career, has been known for being a choreographer. I mean, it's something she still does today, and is very good at it. One of the best choreographers ever. Period. You know, and like I have mentioned on the show before, if there's any part of the movie Head with the monkeys that you do see, and I will be the first to admit that Head is not the type of movie just anybody can put on and enjoy. You do have to be in a certain mood, and maybe certain chemicals can help you enjoy the movie better. But there is one part of that movie where Davy Jones is singing the song "Daddy's Song" by Harry Nilsson, and he does a dance number with Tony Basil, who later went on to do this song, "Hey Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind, hey Mickey."
My first 45 record that I purchased myself was that song.
Yeah, but watch Daddy's Song, because I love how it's the same dance that they both do, but they switch back and forth between like a black background and Davy and Tony dressed in white to a white background with Tony and Davy dressed in black, and they kind of go back and forth, and just I really loved that. But speaking of the Talking Heads, the weird dancing that David Byrne was doing in that video, choreographed by her.
Wow, I did not know that. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the type of stuff you end up learning when you don't date as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't know this fact if I had charisma. Anyway. Shall I go on with my next one here?
Yes, please.
All right. This is my last choice here. We've talked about this band before, and this album in particular was the result of the members of this band kind of embracing new in music. What do I mean by that? The band in question, ZZ Top, the album Eliminator. It's the song Sharp Dressed Man. I spoke about how Billy Gibbons in the past, the main songwriter and lead singer for ZZ Top, went to a Duran Duran show. And after the show, went up to the guys in the band, and the guys in Duran Duran just thought he just wants to say hi. But, Billy Gibbons ended up talking to them about the synthesizer. You know, because even though Duran Duran at that point was mainly a synthesizer band, he recognized that, the type of music Duran Duran was playing still very much followed the rules of the blues, that he played. So what he wanted to learn more. and the results ended up on Eliminator, and you got Sharp Dressed Man. Like, this song is really, like, this is the type of song that plays through every guy's head when, you know, they're ready to go out on a date with their special someone. You know, just every girl crazy about a sharp dressed man. You got the finger guns going and everything. They had, ZZ Top had a way of making these types of songs that walked a tightrope between almost being a little wrong, misogynistic maybe, but still kind of celebrating that whole machismo, I guess, of being a guy, if that makes sense.
Celebrating machismo.
In terms of, you know, the sharp dressed man, just you getting dressed up all fancy, you're gonna hit the town, you're gonna get all the ladies and all that stuff. Just
you know, you guys at home cannot see what Tim the Nerd is doing right now in terms of talking. He is talking about ZZ Top, and he's making finger banging.
How can you not? How can you not? Because when you're cool and you're a sharp dressed man, you can walk, you got the fingers.
You got the fingers, you walk, you got the fingers. Pew, pew,
hey,
pew, pew, pew.
I'm a sharp dressed man. Boom. But just one hell of a great song, one hell of a great album. And, you know, like I said, too, for music fans out there, this is the type of album you want to support from an artist, because you want to support artists that do take that chance to try something different. You know, they could have, you know, stuck with their traditional guitar, bass, and drums and been very successful for years.
Sure.
But they took a chance, and, I mean, it helped them financially, sure, but it broadened their music, too. Mm-hmm. It introduced people in the 80s that, you know, were younger, that didn't necessarily, that maybe thought, you know, ZZ Top was like their dad's music, if you think about it, because the parents were probably listening to stuff like that in the 70s. But because they introduced the synthesizer and had that relationship with the artists of that time, people were more than willing to say, I'm going to give them a shot.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so thank you for taking me out of this hole. Let's go to your last choice here.
All right, so my last choice is out of you know, I've stuck with pop hits really, and one reggae song, but this one at the end is a country pop song from 1983. That's back when we had country pop and we had real country, and it's Dolly Parton and Lenny Kravitz.
Oh, Kenny Rogers.
No, it was Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, who I later, many years later, saw at Dollywood. I was at Dollywood the same time that Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers were, and I'm just walking along the Dollywood trail, and here comes a parade with Dolly and Kenny Rogers in it.
Kenny.
And then she was making a video, so we went to where she was making a video, and we sat in the audience and we're in the video.
Well, we have to put this up on our social media as the video on YouTube. Or was it like a video that was made for just like Dollywood and only played there?
No, it was for a Hallmark show. It was called Shikanahay. It really was. It was called Shikanahay, and the song was like Shikanahay.
Hey,
And
yeah.
Dolly, so it was sort of a Native American kind of thing. There was like Native American flutes, etc. Dolly is on stage in a white fringed cowboy outfit. So inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, the song.
Anyway, the song Islands in the Stream, that is what we are. No one in between. How could we be wrong? I mean, I have got to have heard that song a million times because every adult was playing it in the car constantly.
Yeah, and I mean, you know who wrote it, right?
No.
I believe it was Barry Gibb from the Bee Gees.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, and it's good that he had this outlet, but it kind of, because I mean, this could have easily been a Bee Gees song, but you know, there was such a backlash to disco that, you know, it was not going to be financially cool for them to release their own music, so they started writing songs for other people, and yeah, an Australian wrote a country song. You know?
But you can just hear Barry Gibb singing it, you know. Islands in the stream, That is what we are.
Yeah.
No one in between. How can we be wrong? That's my...
You want to badmouth my finger guns?
We got it going on tonight, let me tell you.
There you go, but this is definitely a good choice here, a good way to end it as well. But the thing with bringing up the Gibbs and the Bee Gees, I mean, their songs were just catchy. They were poppy. I mean, like I haven't heard much Taylor Swift, but I would be shocked if she didn't study the work of the Bee Gees and other similar type of bands, because they had similar type of outlooks too, in terms of just how they created their songs to be able to catch the audience right away and keep them from the start of the song to the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To you it does. Anyway. But
sure it does, Tim.
Yeah.
Whatever you say.
Still, at the end of the day, a good song. Any other comments about 1983?
It was a pretty good year. I can't really remember it, so...
Yeah, I mean, this is around the time where I'd be in, first grade. So...
I think my family had just moved back from Georgia to Tennessee that year.
Yeah, I was not even a wrestling fan yet at this point.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was not aware that wrestling was even a thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't until 87.
4 long years later.
Yes.
When you could have been watching wrestling.
I could have, but at the time that in 1983 wrestling was nothing like 1987 wrestling. I mean, we were talking, the shots in the old armories would, cigar guys would cigar, hey, no, where are they going to fight, type of deal.
Right.
Just a different type of presentation than what I became a fan of.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, enjoy music, folks. The reason we put together these lists is that music is a beautiful thing. Music is a way to kind of allow you to step into the shoes of other people, and it's a great way to kind of create empathy in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the songs that I picked for this list are not the most insightful songs in the world. I'm not going to lie or anything like that, but I hope if you do take the time out of your week to listen to the choices that the professor and I came up with, we hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely. Please do listen to the playlist, and we do hope that you enjoy it.
Exactly. So, any other thoughts you want to impart upon our dear and lovely audience before we wrap up for another week?
Not a single one, Tim.
Yeah. All right. I agree. Let's end this, folks. Thank you all for listening. Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Goodbye.
For sure.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.